Have you finished moving yet? Hurry up and get out. There's no place for someone like you here. Helen, my mother-in-law, cackled over the phone, her voice grating on my nerves. Poor woman. She has no idea what's coming. After all the torment she's put me through, I'm ready to give her a taste of her own medicine. I'm Gloria, a 30-year-old housewife, married to Victor. Together, we manage our finances as a dual-income couple. Despite our equal financial contributions, Victor's clumsiness meant I handled most of the housework while working from home. Ever since we married, Victor has dreamt of building our own house, and his dedication inspired me. After 2 years of hard work, we finally moved into our beautiful new home, complete with gleaming floors. I can't wait for our new life together, I told Victor, full of optimism. We can make this work. At his insistence, we built our house near his parents' place so he could keep an eye on Helen, who had a minor illness but didn't truly need care. I thought it was a reasonable compromise, never expecting things to spiral out of control. A few weeks after our move, Helen made an unexpected visit. I was flustered but managed to offer her some cookies. As she sat on the couch sipping tea, she turned to me and said, "You know, Gloria, now that you're here, let's be honest. How do you feel about being my son's wife?" My careless reply earned me a heavy sigh from her. Victor tells me you're a good wife, but offering such mediocre cookies to a guest? And you never visit our house. Despite marrying my son, a daughter-in-law should make an effort. If you have spare time, come to my place. There's always so much to do. Do you understand? Okay, was the only response I could muster. Helen hadn't been this way when we first met. She had seemed warm and welcoming. If you need anything, let me know. Take your time settling in, she had said, and I had taken her words to heart, never expecting her demeanor to shift so dramatically. In response to my meek reply, she frowned. You clearly lack the backbone to be my son's wife. Starting tomorrow, I'll be here every day. It's a mother-in-law's duty to straighten out a daughter-in-law's twisted nature. After all, her laughter rang out as I felt my anxiety mounting. Would I really have to endure her daily visits? Cold sweat trickled down my back at the thought, but after sampling the cookies, she surprisingly remarked that they were decent before leaving. That marked the beginning of my nightmare. True to her word, Helen began visiting our home every single day. Her visits were never consistent, sometimes in the morning and other times in the afternoon. I always prepared snacks, but it was never enough. More cheap stuff? She'd scoff. I thought it might help to ask her what she preferred, but that only led to ridiculous accusations. Can't you understand my feelings, Gloria? There's dust over there. Clean it up. And you're ruining those clothes by washing them like that. Do it again. What's for dinner? This is terrible. How can you serve Victor such slop? Helen criticized everything in sight, completely indifferent to my feelings. One weekend, as Victor was home from work, Helen continued her relentless harassment. Seeing me rush around to meet her demands, Victor remarked, "You're lucky to be trained by Mom." After she left, I poured my heart out to him about her treatment, but he dismissed my concerns. "Mom's just looking out for you in her own way," he said, brushing me off. When I insisted it was mentally overwhelming, he became irritated and shouted, "Do you hate Mom that much?" Feeling it was pointless to confide in him, I stopped sharing my struggles and began to feel physically drained. Despite my exhaustion, sleep eluded me. As soon as I settled into bed, anxiety about the next day surged, eclipsing any drowsiness. The familiar dread of facing Helen's criticism loomed large in my mind. What will she say next? I wondered, unable to escape the cycle of worry. Gradually, even the simple act of going to bed became a struggle, forcing me to work and tackle house chores throughout the night. My body quickly became worn out, and I began to lose weight. "Gloria, what's with that face? Victor would be scared to see you like this. You look like a monster," Helen scoffed. When I glanced in the mirror, I was greeted by dark circles under my eyes and hollow cheeks, a reflection I couldn't bear to show anyone. A bitter smile tugged at my lips. "Really? You're so useless. With a wife like you, Victor will be a disaster at work. You can't even manage basic housework. And that's the face you greet him with? Poor Victor. Gloria, you should just leave today," Helen suddenly demanded. I was taken aback by her abrupt order and stood there, frozen. "You must," she insisted before striding out. Defying her would only invite more scorn. So in my mentally fragile state, I began packing my things. Just a few minutes later, My phone rang. It was Helen again. Have you finished moving? Leave quickly. There's no place for someone like you. You should be grateful to have stayed in that house at all. Her laughter echoed through the phone, filled with a sense of triumph as if she had just defeated a villain. I left the house as she commanded, the home we had built to realize our dreams. I returned to my parents' house and explained everything. When they learned the full story, my parents were furious, but they first showered me with delicious food, allowing me to rest. There's an undeniable sense of security that comes from being at home with family. I struggled to articulate my grievances, but my parents listened patiently, offering gentle reassurances like, "That must have been tough, and I understand." It dawned on me that I hadn't returned home since all my troubles with Helen had begun. My parents must have been shocked to see their daughter so frail after all this time. Feeling guilty for my perceived disobedience, my phone vibrated. It was a call from Helen. With trepidation, I answered, and her panicked voice flooded through the line. "You need to come back right now." After demanding I leave, she was now insisting I return. I was taken aback by her unreasonable and selfish request, but something about her tone struck me as unusual. Helen explained the situation, and I felt my heart race as I listened in shock. Apparently, Victor had come home and realized
I was away when I reached out to Helen, who I assumed would be visiting that day. Upon hearing from her that she had kicked me out, Victor's face went pale. It made sense. After all, the house we lived in was under my name. Although we were a dual-income couple, most of our expenses were covered by my salary, while Victor's paycheck was shockingly low, evident from his ashen lips. There was no way he could afford to build a new house on his own, and our dream of homeownership was nearly shattered. Witnessing Victor's determination, I decided I would support him in building that house. Since I had taken out the loan, it was only natural that the house was in my name. Realizing this, Helen began to panic. "I'm sorry, but I'm not coming back," I told her firmly. "Don't say that. It was my fault," she pleaded. I delivered my final blow also. "Since I'm no longer living there, I'll be vacating the house. Please take care of it." Wait. Helen's desperation was palpable, but I ignored her cries and hung up the phone. I promptly blocked her number to avoid any more unpleasant calls. The next day, I began the process of vacating the house as I had declared. This meant Victor would have to leave too, but what he did next was no longer my concern. Afterward, I hired a lawyer, a skilled friend of my dad's. I had secretly recorded Helen's terrible behavior, as well as some of Victor's. As the lawyer listened to the recordings, he remarked, "With this evidence, you could receive a substantial amount in alimony." I left everything in the capable hands of my lawyer and was able to divorce Victor. Following his advice, I visited a doctor and was diagnosed with depression, which increased my alimony claim. After that, my phone was flooded with messages from Victor, all begging for forgiveness and pleading for another chance. With no house and a meager salary, he wouldn't be able to afford the hefty alimony, but I ignored his requests and blocked his messages. A few days later, while I was relaxing at home, a loud doorbell interrupted my peace. It was Helen and Victor standing at my door. I ignored them, but they began pounding insistently, calling out, "Gloria." My parents were out and wouldn't be back soon, so I reluctantly responded through the monitor, "Hello." Hearing my voice, they hastily started apologizing from the other side of the door. "Gloria, I'm truly sorry. Please give Victor another chance. I'm sorry I wasn't there for you as a husband. I'll try to be a better support. Please come back." Their words felt hollow, coming from the same people who had scorned and laughed at me. I couldn't help but let out a snort of disbelief. "Stop laughing," Victor shouted angrily from the other side, his rage evident. Helen flinched back in fear. I could see neighbors peeking out due to the commotion, and I frowned, unsure of what to do. The pounding on the door continued, sturdy though it was. What if it broke? Just then, a savior appeared on the monitor of police officers. It seemed a neighbor must have called them. Victor, who had been causing a scene, was quickly restrained and taken away. This incident played a crucial role in finalizing my divorce from Victor. Moreover, I was awarded a substantial amount in alimony. News of Victor and Helen's behavior spread quickly among the neighbors, making them uncomfortable. It was a natural consequence of all the harassment they had subjected me to. I learned that Helen had been visiting my house without her husband's knowledge, and when he discovered the commotion, he chose to divorce her. Despite Helen's pleas and desperation, her ex-husband stood firm in his decision, and they ultimately divorced. The house they had lived in was sold, leaving Victor and Helen in an old apartment, alone and miserable. Because of the incident at my parents' house, the amount of alimony I could claim from Victor increased even further in amount he couldn't possibly pay on his meager salary. I demanded full payment, which forced Victor to borrow money from consumer finance companies, leaving him in a desperate scramble to pay off his debts. Both he and Helen have reportedly been working tirelessly day and night, even taking on evening shifts at construction sites. With their home lost and drowning in debt, they turned to their relatives for help, but given their past behavior, not a single family member came to their aid. In fact, they distanced themselves from Victor and Helen. Feeling abandoned by both their ex-husband and blood relatives, they even reached out to friends, only to be continually cut off. A mutual friend of Victor and mine mentioned that they kept sending desperate messages like, "We have no money, please help us." If ignored, they would call repeatedly. Their behavior was utterly unreasonable, and it seemed unlikely that anyone would be willing to help them now. This is what happens when you prioritize your own interests over others. If they had considered the feelings of those around them, offered a helping hand, or shown even a hint of goodwill toward me, perhaps things wouldn't have turned out this way. Meanwhile, I've been recuperating at my parents' house, continuing my work, and even started dating a man I met through my job. He knows about my past marriage, and gently acknowledges how hard it must have been for me. His thoughtfulness has been a balm for my still recovering mental state. He supports me at work and takes me to beautiful places on weekends, as he frequently visits my parents to see me. They seem to think he's a good match. Recently, he even invited me to go jewelry shopping together, hinting at a potential happy future with him. This time, I refuse to make the same mistakes. I will say no to things that don't sit well with me and actively work to improve situations before they worsen. It's not just for my sake, it's essential for ensuring my happiness with him as we move forward together. I'm determined to learn from my past and to do my best in my own way.